Welcome to Discourse Pod, the podcast where we discuss the discourse, brought to you by Discourse Blog. Jack is here.
Hey.
And in the third chair this week, Rafi. Welcome.
I'm here. Also, hey.
Producer
Hello,
Sam on the
Rafi.
keys.
Oh, sorry. I completely interrupted you shouting out Sam. Sorry, Sam. Don't
As
make
a
my audio sound
producer,
bad.
you should know.
We're already breaking the one thing producer Sam asked us not to do. We're all of not even a full minute in. We're already talking over each other.
I'm going to do accountability right here. It's mostly my fault.
I'm going to
Okay.
disagree with that.
Oh, it's
Jack and
mostly
Rafi
your
already
fault?
Yeah,
calling themselves
Okay.
in.
Okay, I'm fine to also blame you, Rafi.
I'm the new guy.
Yeah,
Blame it on me.
I blamed you for things in the past, and it's worked out great.
I'm really going to start to witness whatever Sid and Nancy situation we got going on with you two.
We'll behave. Don't worry. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Yeah, we're not going to commit murders.
Yes, I've told Rafi I will be on very good behavior today.
He did.
Wow. See, got ahead of it. Speaking on being on good behavior, we're coming to you basically live from New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani's visit to the White House today. Summit, excuse
Meeting
me.
of the minds.
That apparently went gangbusters. Trump is practically doing that thing after you go on a great first date and he's like lying on his bed with his hands like this and kicking his
Twirling
feet up
the
and
phone
down.
cord.
Yeah, twirling his phone cord. I literally
Yeah.
posted the meme of Mr. Burns doing that.
Nice.
And it's, of course, like
Yeah.
the power of a hot mayor really is infinite.
Trump's
Yeah.
group chat is on fire right now.
Trump
Yeah.
is currently participating in the opening number from Bye Bye Birdie.
Exactly.
Little musical theater for you.
Yeah.
Jack,
Well,
can you give us the rundown of like why did Mamdani go to the White House this week?
I believe his side was like the one that reached out to the White House and was like, we want to meet. And Rafi, obviously, tell me if you agree with this assessment. I think he went basically because, as the meeting itself showed, like he correctly assessed that going would make Trump feel like special and flattered, like having someone come to him and be like, oh, I need to meet with the president. And I think he thought he could somewhat like disarm Trump, maybe not for any sort of long-term period, but for this little bit. And I also think that it's like in line with his rhetoric throughout the campaign, which was like, I will meet with anyone. Like, I will talk to anyone who wants to like deliver for New York. It's not the same as like meeting with Kathy Hochul in some ways, but in other ways, it kind of is the same. Like, he will meet with friend or foe, blah, 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 blah. The stakes are considerably higher with Trump. But Trump, first of all, we know that like he likes winners. He likes hot people.
He likes people with power in New York.
He loves people with power in New York. He likes to be liked, and he's extremely susceptible to flattery. And he also very famously is completely swayed by whoever the last person he talked to is. And also, I think that to a certain extent, like Trump is such a flagrant like liar and bullshit artist that it's not that he doesn't care about what people say about him, because obviously in a lot of ways he cares very deeply and he like holds grudges forever, blah, 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 blah. But in terms of talking shit back and forth, I think there's a part of him that's like, I talk all this shit all the time. This is how we do these things. Whatever. Nice to see you. Blah,
he more
blah,
or
blah.
less he more or less said that during the meeting. I saw there someone asked him a question about, I think it was Stefanik calling Mamdani a jihadist, and Trump said she's great and she was campaigning, and people say things during campaigns, but
Exactly.
he's here now and I love him, and he would do googly eyes at him.
Yeah. What's your read, Rafi, on like why Zohran would have wanted this meeting to happen?
In general, I think it's two things. I think one, he's been doing this sort of reassurance tour since he was elected, like he's reaffirming that he's keeping Tish as the NYPD commissioner, and he's been meeting with all these sort of more mainstream figures and making these sort of mainstream moves. In part, I think just because that's how you assume power in New York. And in part, I think he's making an effort to sort of demonstrate that he's not going to come into power by making waves within the party and in general. I think he's very conspicuously not trying to pick fights where he can avoid it. And this is, I think, part of that. I think if you look at it from like a risk assessment point of view, like there is nothing for Mamdani to lose by going to this meeting. What's Trump going to do that he hasn't already threatened to do or threatened him with or called him? So there's no risk for him to go. If it went badly, he could say, I went, I tried, I made the effort, and I tried to stand up for my city. And it went well. And he can say, look, I've gone into the lion's den and earned plaudits from my worst enemy. And now you can see that I'm working for you, New York. So there was really no downside for him to do it. Whereas for Trump, ordinarily there would be a downside because he looks like a fool. It's such a glaring 180 in the way he's treating him. Again, it's Trump, so everyone assumes that there's no real core to whatever he's saying. There's no point that he's pivoting around. He's just, I guess Jack said, whoever the last person he talked to, that's just the direction he goes. Is there a downside for him? I think he came out looking weaker. I think, does he suffer long-term damage from this? Probably not. It's just one more weird interaction between Trump and the rest of the world.
Well, I just has me thinking about his victory speech on election night when he was elected. He finally beat Andrew Cuomo for the second time. His acceptance speech and victory speech took on a much more adversarial tone toward Trump. And I remember, Jack, you and I were talking about this with Cros. It was really striking. You pointed out, like, here was someone who very clearly articulated, like, I'm ready to fight for you against Trump on your behalf. Do you think of this as like a contrast from his victory speech? Is this now he's like kind of being chummier? Or is this really just him doing what he does well, which is like he can charm anybody? And that is how he's making good on that promise to fight.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, on one level, it's clearly a contrast between him being like, Donald Trump, fuck you, to, oh, I had such a pleasant meeting with the president. But substantively, like, I didn't catch him saying anything
That's
that
true.
he hasn't said already. I didn't catch him taking back, like, anything that he said about Trump, including in the
Fascism
most
part.
insane moment, like, that
Trump
I can
ends
remember
the debate,
witnessing.
like the whole debate, do you call him a fascist? And just
Right.
he just tweeted it out.
Yeah. And so Trump just being like, oh, whatever, like, it's fine, which is, I think, gets at what I was saying earlier, where Trump maybe like watched that speech and was like, whatever, like, I don't take that seriously.
It's the
And
price
so-
of doing business.
Yeah. And so I think for Mamdani, he's like, it is better for me if I have a productive and not like super antagonistic relationship with the president of the United States, especially one who is deeply interested in what happens in New York City and who's promised to like deploy the might of the federal government against New York City. And I don't think like any of those threats are off the table, because the second that Zohran is actually in office and does things, like, I think Trump, as he does with everyone, will zigzag 50 different ways. So I don't see it like as a particular walking back of like his previous stance, as much as this is something that he definitely has to navigate. And like, he's made the decision that to start this thing off on a hopefully like not a super, super hostile note is better than just sticking only to antagonism. I think when he takes office, then that will be a time like to really assess. And even before then, what does he say publicly about the things that Trump does? Like, he is very like, oh, I only talk about New York City or things like that. But he is now a huge national political figure. And there's going to be an expectation of him that he doesn't just let these things slide by. And so if Trump sends like ICE into New York, like, how is he going to handle that? If Trump threatens to cut off federal funds like he's done, what is he going to do about that? So I think people are absolutely going to expect him resist the things that Trump does or tries to do. But I think for now, like, the fact that he got Trump to be like, yeah, that's bullshit, he's not a jihadist, that he got Trump to be like, actually there are a lot of similarities between like his voters and my voters, and he's like such a nice person and we had a great time, he's going to be a great mayor. Like, that is valuable political capital. When he was like, oh, I feel great living in his New York City. Like, I could almost hear Andrew Cuomo's like scream from all the way in Westchester.
Well, Andrew Cuomo, and also how many New York Times stories have there been about they're going to move out? All
Right.
the industry, all the titans of capitalism are going to move out. And all of a sudden, here's their messianic figure saying, no, it's fine. Stay there. It's great.
Right. The sort of like dissonance between the tone of the campaign speech and the tone of this meeting that you highlighted, Alex, is like something that people are going to have to get used to, because there's going to be a lot of instances where Mamdani is either like walking back previous positions, which he's already done to a certain extent on stuff about policing, like he softened his stance on the level of the independence of the like civilian complaints board in New York. He's obviously made an accommodation with Jessica Tisch, who is like an ardent Zionist, like old school policing, stop and frisk, broken windows, like down the line kind of person.
And is a nepo baby of the like old New York power brokers.
Yes. Like, being in power is not the same as running for office. And like, people are going to have to get used to that. And it's not to say that, oh, that means we have to excuse like anything that he does because it's different to be in power. But people have to be clear with themselves about the mission that he was trying to accomplish. And like, inherently, if you are seeking to become the mayor of New York City, that is not a revolutionary act. Like, that is you trying to work within the system.
And no one
going
runs
to work
for
within
high
the system
public office if they're trying,
Yeah.
you're joining in, you're buying in.
Exactly. And so this is going to happen a lot. And probably that's going to make people uncomfortable in a lot of ways, including myself. But like, this is the deal. And like, people should not expect that Zohran is now going to be like at the front of every march, because he is now going to be overseeing the police force that is monitoring, probably surveilling, and possibly like violently disrupting that march. And that's the reality. It does on one level feel different, but get ready for more of that.
Rafi had brought up earlier some moves Mamdani has been making since he got elected in his transition period. He's retaining the police commissioner. He's having this little kumbaya moment with Trump. There's also big news this week about him putting his thumb on the scale in terms of whether the New York City DSA endorses a primary fight for Hakeem Jeffries' seat, minority leader, coming out very publicly against New York City Council member Chi Ose, actively advocating that they do not endorse him in this primary fight, in large part because he's communicated that he doesn't think he could win and it's not the move. And he's had a lot of prominent support behind that. I think AOC may be the biggest voice in this fight so far. We also saw that there's another longtime congressperson in New York retiring after this term, my congresswoman, Nydia Velázquez. I'm curious what either of you think about what do these moves in his transition period tell you or what they don't tell you about how he might govern as mayor.
Let's preface this by saying I'm not one of his constituents, so I have a little separation from this. His transition moves, I think, are in some way, like I said before, he's trying not to piss people off, I think, or at least not piss people off on things that he doesn't need to right now. And he also takes seriously this idea that he is like a mayor for the entire city. And he is obviously going to be pushing progressivism, but I think he's making a specific effort not to scare people who may be anxious after his victory. I'd say his moves are intended to be reassuring in some way, to save himself the hassle of having won and immediately waging war against people who would otherwise be his ostensible allies. Like, I think AOC is a really good example. When she was first elected to Congress, she also, she made enemies, but she also ingratiated herself with a lot of the people in positions of power, and did so in a way that I think avoided other fights and served her in the long run. And I imagine that's what Mamdani is doing as well, is trying to get as much of his infrastructure in place without pissing people off who are already prone to be pissed at him, and saving his energy for where he needs it once he's actually in power.
I think that's right. And I think if you want to be like generous to him, there are a lot of people who want to take him down and who are waiting for him to fail.
Right.
And he like needs as few enemies as possible.
And to give them as few excuses for jumping down his throat. That's what I'm saying when I'm saying he's not trying to make waves. He is just trying to get everything in place.
Exactly. And so I think that is a lot of this. Like, he is a 34-year-old or 35, I forget what he is now, Muslim democratic socialist who just completely upended the entire political system in New York City. But now actually he will be the person accountable every day in a way that he hasn't been. And so I think he's like not trying to cause trouble for himself, like Rafi was saying. But again, I also think, like I was saying earlier, he is playing an insider's game. And I think there's obviously a calculation behind that like he's going to, for instance, get Kathy Hochul to come to him on certain things, and that he's trying to figure out how to do this while making as few like genuine enemies as possible in order to like achieve these goals. But like at a certain point, he is going to like have to make some enemies, because he is going to have to make some decisions. The beef about the Chiosei endorsement, in one sense, it's like this incredibly disciplined, ruthless politician who just maneuvered himself from 0% to being the next mayor of New York with the profile that he has, is not afraid to throw his weight around. Tell me something that I don't know. It's like he has such an affable sort of demeanor, but you do not get to do that unless you are willing to be quite cold and calculated.
You've got to have the knife in your hands behind your back while you've got the smile on your face.
Yeah. He went to a DSA meeting, stood in line like and waited his turn, and in front of the entire crowd was like, don't endorse him, which like that is an incredibly public stance to take. And he said it in interviews. And this was someone who had endorsed him, like they'd been very sort of bonded to each other throughout the campaign, like who he clearly took inspiration from in terms of his communication style. But he's like, I don't want to antagonize Hakeem Jeffries, especially for a fight I don't think that I can win. There's a lot of people, I think, in DSA who don't agree with that, who are like, Hakeem Jeffries is terrible, and like he deserves to have a meaningful primary challenge. But again, like Zohran Mamdani is not anymore like some DSA guy. He is the incoming mayor of New York City, and he has different considerations than other people are going to have. Now, you can like disagree with those considerations. Like personally, I'm not losing sleep over the idea that like Hakeem Jeffries is not going to get this primary challenge because I don't think he is particularly beatable. I could be totally wrong, and Chiose is running as far as I can tell.
It would be a pretty big deal if he got
primaried.
And like, you know, like if I wind up being wrong about that and like he's vulnerable or even beatable or is beaten, like that would be awesome because Hakeem Jeffries is terrible and like of course deserves to be ousted. But I can understand if you're Zohran Mamdani why you're like, please do not like immediately
don't fuck this up for me.
Put this sort of trouble onto my plate. I was slightly surprised by how public he was about it rather than behind the scenes stuff, which was getting leaked out before he went public with it, where he was like, he's privately discouraged him from doing this. But then he was like, actually, I'm going to say this on the record, on camera, like in front of a lot of people, telegraphing this as loudly as he possibly can. And again, I keep coming back to this, but these are the kinds of things that people should get ready for a lot more of because he is going to have to side with or against people over and over and over again. And a lot of times he's probably going to make a choice that we don't like, you know, and he's probably going to do something like say, actually, I'm going to try to prop up the despicable minority leader in Congress who today, like after Zohran Mamdani very publicly stuck his neck out to say, I wish that you would not try to oust this person, voted for a GOP resolution denouncing socialism, like in an obvious backhanded slap at Mamdani. And so is this going to wind up like making him look stupid because Jeffries is like, I don't give a shit. I still want to destroy you. I don't know. But like, that's the level that he's playing at now. It just is. And so I think we are going to just become acquainted with like his style and like the kinds of choices that he makes in a way that we really have not been, because like now it's about to be real life, not just like the dream that we have all been living in this past year.
So something you said stuck out with me when you talked about how he went to this DSA meeting and faced the people in the group to explain his decision. And I think that's part of a broader trend with him. And I think it loops back into his meeting at the White House today, that he has, over the course of his campaign and now in this transition period, persistently demonstrated that he feels one of the biggest strengths he has is his capacity to show up in person for things. He wants to be around people. He wants to be on site. He wants to be talking to people and looking them in the eye. And he is a very charismatic person. And I can see why a person who has that sort of skill set would feel comfortable exerting himself that way. But I think it's also, it explains in part why he went to the White House, because he understands that he has to do it. He has to be the one to physically do it. And he understands that Donald Trump responds to physical presence in a way that he doesn't to sort of dueling sound bites. So I think there's probably going to be more instances of him going places to do potentially unpopular things as he sort of consolidates and figures out the scope of what his mayoralship is going to be. He's a very present mayor in a way that I think others may not have been in the past, or certainly Andrew Cuomo during the campaign wasn't there. He was issuing edicts from wherever. Certainly there'll be backroom dealings because that's the job, but I think there will also be a much more physical public presence associated with them.
I think that's a really good point, Rafi. And I mean,
definitely,
if you just look at the campaign that he ran, it was an incredibly like tactile, street level, like
participatory,
I'm with the people campaign. And it was obviously a contrast with the very removed, like distant, I'm just going to be in like a drafty Union Hall campaign that Cuomo ran. And so
occasionally showing up on the street in a Forerunner.
Right. And like talking about how like his Bronco isn't like the murder Bronco that like OJ ran away in.
Yeah, this is the good white Bronco.
Yeah, so I think you're right that this is his like political brand, and if there's one thing that we have learned about Zohran Mamdani is that he is incredibly attentive when it comes to the maintenance of his political brand and his public persona. There's going to be a lot to watch. It's going to be a wild ride.
I am curious how the rest of the GOP is going to respond to this, because Trump kind of cut him off at the knees and took, who knows if it'll last, but Mamdani was a big punching bag for the party as a whole, as a fundraising subject, as an example of the demonic Muslim socialists taking over the country. And Trump has basically robbed the party of that tool in their tool chest. And so I'm going to be really curious to see how they speak about Mamdani if they're asked to respond to the meeting today, what they're going to say. Like, I think there's going to be some struggling for them to get on the same page after Trump lobbed this grenade in their midst.
Speaking of people doing unpopular things in person, like this transition.
I do.
The Olivia Nuzzi saga continues.
Is that how you say her name?
Phonetically, apparently that's how it is.
Whoa.
Because when we were all forced to look at her Wikipedia and find out her birthday is January 6th, it's Nuzzi phonetically, which sounds wrong.
Yeah, I can't think of her as anything but Nuzzy. But fine, Nuzzi, go, I'll accept
Olivia
it.
Nuzzi,
Yeah. Olivia Nuzzi John.
Her story continues apace. Last week, we talked about her book excerpt in the new Vanity Fair. But now we must turn our attention, unfortunately, to her disgraced ex-fiancé, Ryan Lizza, who published a absolutely chilling part 1 to what I imagine will be a multi-part missive about their torrid and cursed, frankly, love affair.
Their struggles.
Their struggle, yeah. In part 1, after a very overwrought and frankly horrendous metaphor about bamboo,
the amount of terrible writing like in this back and forth is like brain pulverizing.
I said this also, it really underscores and puts into such like a harsh light that many of your favorite journalists cannot write one coherent sentence.
No.
Or they file absolute like drivel.
Yes.
In the spirit of what Ryan Lizza filed. Like, some of your favorite writers are terrible, and they're just hiding behind really good editors.
Well, we can get into the specifics of what he wrote down the road, but it was funny to me that like he clearly had been sitting on this for a long time. This was something that I would bet money he'd written it months in advance and revised it and gone through it a million different times, maybe talked to lawyers. Like, this was a piece of work that he'd really committed to, which makes the bamboo metaphor even funnier, because you got to assume that we got to keep it in through every revision and every
he thought it was so clever. He thought it was so expressive and emotional. This is what we call in the business a real polished turd. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there weren't any like grammatical errors. Like, a lot of the garbage on Substack is just like, there's just like no edit on it, right? It's just like spit out garbage. Like, structurally doesn't make any sense. Like, syntactically doesn't make any sense. Like, those typos. No, there was none of that. Like,
that's why if you're going to read Substack, you have to read trusted Substack bloggers such as those of us on Discourse Blogger.
Who are edited, by the way.
Yes. Who are edited, but also who know what they're doing.
Know how to write.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've digressed far too long, because Ryan Lizza ends this first piece alleging that in addition to her professed, quote, digital-only affair, which, again, we really must strike this from the national record, digital affair, to her affair with RFK Jr., that she also allegedly had an affair with former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford.
Famously, the guy who has affairs.
Yes.
Apparently, they allegedly had some kind of fling when she profiled him in 2020 in his doomed campaign to be the Republican presidential nominee in 2020.
Right.
Jack, what do we do now?
Lord, first of all, I'm really pissed off at Ryan Lizza because part 2 has not dropped yet. And I presume that probably by the time this pod comes out, he'll have dropped part 2.
Another.
Because that's our luck with the timing of this pod. But
True.
I think I said this online. I'm like, finally, like Ryan Lizza has contributed something worthwhile to American journalism. Purely just that last section, because the first part is, as you say, terrible.
It's important to point out, though, that last section, he builds up to it. Throughout the entire piece, he references Nuzzi's affair, and he never mentions RFK by name.
Right.
But there's all sorts of hints and allusions. And then in the last 3 or 4 graphs, he lists a bunch of features of what he discovered about her affair plausibly apply to RFK. And then he reveals that
it's Mark
actually,
Sanford, yeah. There's a certain level of dramatic irony and the bait and switch. You knew he thought that was so clever, and I will give it to him. He got me.
Yeah,
he got all of
yes.
1,000%.
Absolutely.
I mean, well, I'm reading from this now. He was a famous politician, 32 years older than Olivia, and well known for a sex scandal. But more importantly, he was a presidential candidate, a source, and the subject of Olivia's recent profile for New York. I have no clue exactly if that age difference is the same for Sanford and RFK Jr.
But it's not the kind of
thing. But it's not the kind of thing that you're going to be like, 32? That actually seems more like 35 to me. And
it's very clear what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's what's so crazy is that, according to him, this has happened enough times that he can give all of those details and it applies to multiple people. That's crazy. Doing that once is crazy. Doing it twice and
potentially
who knows
more.
If there are other incidents like this is unbelievable. And also this thing where he found out that it was Mark Sanford by finding stationery from a hotel that fell out of her bag and contained
physical details, I think he says.
The love letter?
Yeah, it contained a love letter.
That suggested that they'd seen each other's bodies. Or there's a
weird... yes. I flipped to another page and saw a name and the first line of it, an unfinished love letter to him that included enough details to confirm a physical relationship and the hint of some kind of falling out. I'm like, you're doing that over and over again? That's fucking wild. And I do not want to give the impression that Ryan Lizza is some great person who was completely devastated by this evil woman who he devoted his life to. For one thing, this is someone who he left his wife and children to be with, this 15, 20 years younger than him woman.
He's got his own issues.
And he says in
Let's not
the
forget
piece,
that this is the guy who famously was let go from the New Yorker amid a sexual misconduct.
Yes.
Which he references in the most oblique.
Right.
Just some difficulty with my former editor or something.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, I love that she hated David Remnick because he was the one who fired him. He also says in the piece, I was not a perfect partner, but the scale of Olivia's betrayal was devastating. That is code for I cheated on her too.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. They seem perfectly fit for each other.
Yes. But so this to me is not, oh my God, she's the terrible one and poor Ryan Lizza. It's these two people were awful and awful to each other, but it appears only one of them continually kept sleeping with the people she was covering as part of her reporting in multiple presidential campaigns.
Yeah.
That is the craziness. And then you couple it with the insanity of the excerpt that was published in Vanity Fair. It's even more unreal.
I think Cros had a really nice blog about this week.
Yeah.
On the site where he talked about journalism's really taken a beating these last few decades. I'm going to badly summarize Cros's blog here. Everyone should read it. We'll link to it in the show notes. But fucking your sources, really not what you should be able to come back from. And
Much
yet,
less get a high-profile promotion.
in a book deal, despite it all, really just like, talk about kicking us while we're down, man. Rough stuff. So what do we think happens from here to both Nuzzi, Ryan Lizza, Vanity Fair et al.?
It seems like there's not going to be any consequences. If this is where we're at after everything we've already found out, like, hard to see anyone suddenly deciding, oh, now we have to draw the line with her career. Like, she's going to be the West Coast editor of Vanity Fair and put out all sorts of nonsense through that position. And eventually it'll just be like one of her stories, I think. Like,
So
I don't see there being real consequences here.
We don't think any of this news or any potential additional news, we must admit to have heard some chatter. Part 2s, Part 3s of Ryan Lizza, notwithstanding.
Yeah, there's a lot flying around.
We don't think any of this endangers her new cushy job working for Condé Nast. I mean, it did lose her job at New York Magazine.
I don't feel as definitively about this as Rafi does. I think we definitely have to see what else comes out, and we have to see what she says about it. She has made no public statement at all since the Lizza piece dropped. So I think that will be like very important. He seems to have the goods in terms of the Sanford stuff, but she will have to say her piece about all of that as well. Or maybe she doesn't. I don't know. I do think this makes Vanity Fair look dumb as fuck. It was just like cynical, but like, oh my God, like eye roll when they hired her in the first place. Like, there should be consequences for like doing one of the worst things you can do in journalism. But what a symbol of like how if you're a certain kind of person, you never pay any price for these kinds of things. Then the combination of the messiness of all of this and the awfulness of the excerpt that was put out. Like, I have to read this one paragraph that's been going around all week, but that people who aren't as drenched in all of this shit as we are might not have heard. This is about, obviously, her and RFK Jr. from her new book. I would take a bullet for you, the politician said. She won't refer to him by name, which is so stupid. He always said that. Please don't say that, I said. I always said that. From his mouth, the bullet theoretical launched the bullet possible. I did not like to think about it. About the armed man at his speech, or the armed man who broke into his home, or the armed men he paid to guard him from armed men who sought to harm him while the federal government denied his pleas for protection from the security agency whose modern protocols were carved by the same bullets that cut boughs from his family tree and cut the track of the American experiment. That is some of the worst prose I have ever read in my entire life. Last week we talked about like how she told the New York Times that she like wrote most of this like on her phone while hiking in California.
You can tell.
And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like that. So I think this does not look like a sort of like canny, whereas before it was like the weird equivalent of like, oh, like we hired like Anna Delvey.
Right,
like,
we
to
hired
write
the
for
Scandal
us.
because that gets eyeballs.
Yeah, like, you know, we hired this like provocative kind of figure. This just makes it look like we hired like a person who seems to have like some pretty serious issues. What part of Ryan Liz's thing also goes into that before she was with him, she was like in some kind of like situation with Keith Olbermann.
A wild age disparity.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, he's like 34 years older than her. So
this is when she was a teenager.
I think that's the implication, you know, and Keith Olbermann tweeted out, he was like, because part of it was like, oh, he bought her like $15,000 like worth of jewels.
Paid for college.
And he was like, oh, this was over 4 years. That's only like $1,250 per celebration, which I'm like, shut the fuck up, you idiot. But this makes her look troubled, shall we say, you
Generous.
know, or like unwell.
Yeah.
And like the excerpt makes her look untalented in a way where whatever you want to say about her stuff for New York, it wasn't that.
No.
Yeah, there's a reason she was high profile in the first place. Like, she wasn't nobody.
Right. And so I think it makes them look like their quality control is really off and that they lunged at this seemingly glamorous, interesting person who looks a lot less interesting and glamorous now and who just is wrapped up in this really tawdry kind of situation. So, like, I'm not sure that any of that is going to be enough to, like, get her out. I think they probably at this point wish they hadn't hired her. And so is this going to be a situation where they're like, we don't care, like, you know, we got more traffic on that post than like anything in the last year. She's bringing in like good stuff, which I doubt. Or is this going to be like, okay, in 6 months they like quietly part ways? I think any of those things are possible. So I'm not sure that like they're just going to be able to like weather this out, because this is real bad on every level.
And especially at such a like raw moment for Vanity Fair. The very first issue for the new editor, who has not made a lot of friends, given how he's overhauled the magazine and the website and sort of the staff.
Yeah.
Not what you would call an auspicious start.
Right.
But to Jack, your point, like, if it's moving the numbers where we need them to move, then maybe they'll eat it for a certain amount of time and see where it goes. But, man.
I think she is an asset to them in so much as she has this sort of access with the powers that are influencing all sorts of media these days. She was very in with the people in the Trump administration. I think for Vanity Fair, that's probably part of the calculus. Is it worth all this bullshit to have this person who could be an asset in terms of like the powers that be down the road?
Though, like, she's not in DC anymore. She very ostentatiously was like, I've left that behind. I'm, you know.
Goodbye
like,
to all that.
Yeah. Like, I'm an LA girly now. And, like, she's an editor and not, like, a writer for them.
So
although who knows what that means.
We really should just say they hand out the editor title at Condé Nast like as part of your like onboarding package. So it really doesn't mean
it's true
anything. Like, you might not actually edit a single like letter of copy there. You can be called an editor.
Yes, exactly. But so I'm not sure that she's gonna be on that beat in the same way that she had been.
No, but I think, at least for Vanity Fair, I think they can say, look, we now have this like conservative coded, conventionally attractive person with connections to the Trump administration as our like high profile hire. I think that positions them in a way that they may not be totally unhappy with.
I just feel like this whole thing, especially when you add the Lizza stuff into it, like there's just like a cheapness to the whole thing.
Like tabloid scandal, like there's only so much I feel like.
Yeah.
But how much of that is just like navel gazing media and how much of that is going to matter to everyone else?
But like Vanity Fair, like navel gazing media is like a core part of that brand. Like you can see like their thinking in terms of like why they might have initially wanted to hire her. But Vanity Fair in particular is a title that like at its best always struck like a very fine balance between the sort of trashy coded stuff and like the more prestige kind of stuff. I found myself thinking like, I'm not sure that like Tina Brown, when she was running Vanity Fair, would have possibly made like a choice like this, but I'm not sure she would have made this specific decision, like to bring this person on. Like it has the like sort of infrastructure like of a sort of classic Vanity Fair, high-low, scandalous, but like also has the trappings of sophistication, like connected to Washington, but connected to like New York and like vaguely like Hollywood.
Ostensibly compelling in their own right.
Yeah, but this feels like stunty in a way that like Vanity Fair at its peak, I think, was mostly able to avoid. Like they were mostly able to stay just on the right side of that line. And this feels like it's gone the wrong way over that line. However, who the hell knows? I think it's entirely possible that everything you say, Rafi, turns out to be what happens.
Tina
Yes.
Brown would have just done a story on her, maybe put it on
Yes.
a cover.
Yes.
Great
Tina Brown
design.
would have fucking loved this story.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure she would have been like, oh, please come work for me. It's just off. Yeah.
I just think if there is any lesson from the past decade, it's that tawdry, off, scandalous things that seemed too trashy to survive. They're having a moment. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, that's why I'm like, you could absolutely be right,
yeah,
Rafi.
I think we'll see.
Absolutely. Speaking of trashy, this is when I have to bring producer Sam into the conversation. Sam, where are you?
I was slightly hoping that you had forgotten about this.
Are you kidding me?
Wait, what?
I'm not kidding you at all.
What is this?
Well, I told Sam that we would probably be bringing this up on the pod because was this yesterday, Sam, that you
2 days
posted
ago,
this opinion
maybe?
in our Slack after Olivia Nuzzi's really terrifying teenage pop
yes.
song
That's a whole other.
titled
That's a whole other
Jailbait
pod. Yeah.
came out. And Sam,
Livy.
you were like, I have to admit, this is a banger. I just am
Out of
curious.
context and not what I said.
I just wanted to give you a platform to explain yourself.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you a rope to
so
hang.
if you exactly, Rafi. If you haven't listened, should we also link this Blue Sky tweet or whatever in the notes?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Please go listen to Jailbait by Livy. This was the song that presumably she had like a runway for some sort of pop career. There's no way that this was like a one-off.
I think she was like trying to be a child performer.
Like a child
Yeah.
star?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. If so, there's so much more where that comes from. Because, I can just picture this being one of her many attempts as a triple threat. But her song Jailbait by Livy, I guess she submitted it to some music blog in 2010. They published it. Somebody else found it. Thank you, people who now know how to navigate this new terrible Google search that no longer gives us anything from 15 years ago. But I have listened to the song, and then deeply unfortunately, my context being that I'm a former music journalist, I'm a big music enjoyer, I'm not like a hater of the world. I enjoy the world very much, but I also believe that the production on Olivia Nuzzi's Jailbait by Livy is actually quite enjoyable. The production, not the lyrics. If we had different lyrics to this song, because it's very much in the vein of, they called it a like Kesha-esque, and I agree with that. But the big thing that it reminded me of was like a Cobra Starship sort of era. Like I can see some like of this weird like pop emo crossover, a little bit of a Lady Gaga. But yeah, it's actually like not a bad production to me. I'm like, who was her producer? What else have they worked on? Maybe there's somebody famous now and we just don't know. I have to find this voice. I'm not going to make this my task, even though I want to now. I asked my husband what he thought as a fellow music lover. He said, I don't agree with you, not in so many words, but I don't know. I feel insane saying that out loud. It's a terrible opinion to have, because not only is it a song about, being jailbait every single turn.
Yeah, the lyrics are insane.
How many times did you say like cis teen will get you 20?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what Tumblr blog did you find that on?
Man.
But just if you just change the lyrics to anything else, I'm like, this had the potential.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
someone was cooking
From
dinner.
one
is what I gotta
producer
say.
to another, you're like, you know
Yeah.
what? You did that.
Sam, this is when I make my confession,
Which is what?
which is I got the hook stuck in my head.
Yes, yes,
The hook,
exactly.
to be clear,
Uh-huh.
is just Livy going jailbait, jailbait.
Man.
And I was
And
like,
that's how you know.
and I was like,
That's how you know this is a good production.
and I was like, oh God,
It
like
has-
it's catchy.
It has all the making. It's got like 15 different earworms. That's like the prominent one. Looking at this purely qualitatively as a researcher, as a lover of the world, and
As an
music
audio
art,
expert,
it has
as our
Yeah.
audio,
as an audio
as our
expert.
producer and engineer, you know what good
Sound
sound
technician.
is.
Yeah.
Jailbait is just when
Yes,
she
same.
really, even from the beginning,
It's-
she really does not do
I
subtext.
know.
She does
It's
not do
so-
subtext.
I mean, we should be,
At
we
all.
should be clear. This song is so dark,
it
it is-
really is.
so
It is.
dark.
It's also very dark considering what she was doing like shortly thereafter. Like she was
Yes.
shacking up with Keith.
Yeah, no.
And then
it's-
let's
I
not
mean,
forget the Anthony Weiner of it all.
Yes. There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah.
Sam's first comment on this was like, I gotta say the production rules. Like, I gotta say this one slaps.
bursting in like the
I
Kool-Aid
hate
man to tell
handing
everybody.
it to somebody. I hate being like, you know what?
Yeah,
Makes
you do not under
those
any
bad
circumstances
guys-
have to hand it to Livy.
Yeah. However,
But as you can see, I'm like a reluctant, I wouldn't say like co-signer of this because I thought it
No.
sounded like very cheap, but
sure.
I
Sure.
did get it stuck in my head.
It's stuck in your head.
I was
Shame.
like,
Shame.
And now you're singing along to Jailbait by Livy.
I'm not singing
my
along
God.
to it anymore.
You will be after
Mentally.
this.
You should play that as an outro in this week's episode, Sam.
Oh, why not? There's no way it's copyrighted.
You should. We have fair use.
Yeah, it's fair use if you do 10 seconds.
That
On
sounds like
that
a great way
note,
to end us.
question mark?
On that note, we do have to give a hand to Jack and Rafi and producer Sam for coming on and helping us end this with something positive, which
Yes.
is future bop. Well, maybe always bop. Jailbait by Livy.
Maybe we can use this and use Sam's praise to be like, listen, Olivia,
Great.
this was
Here's the
always your
road now,
calling.
take it.
You've strayed too
Yeah.
far from the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Get back.
do what you've always been the best at, which
Yeah.
is making pop smashes. Sam says, I'm sure this will be part of her pivot too.
Let the healing begin.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. This is like the sunlit uplands that we can journey to from these very low valleys.
Now, if she pivots to a pop career, that's going to get you on the cover of Vanity Fair.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know what it is? She's like a real housewife. Like
Oh,
this is what I
yeah. I
imagine
could see
what most
that.
of the housewives were like as high-powered business 30-year-olds.
Reality TV is absolutely in her.
Oh, I'm sure
Future.
she's fielding offers left and right.
Yes, totally.
I'd watch.
Also, the miniseries about this is going to be incredible. Who she signed to. Maybe we can look it up. Her agent. See
Oh,
where,
yeah,
see where she's some
probably.
deals. Do not tune in next week for an episode.
No.
We're taking next week off. Don't tune in next week, but tune in for the week after that for
Yes.
more new episodes. Bye.
Bye.
All right.